DREDF, Healthcare Stories. Karen Schneiderman is being interviewed in an office at the Boston Center for Independent Living in Boston, Massachusetts.
My name is Karen Schneiderman, and I live in Jamaica Plain, which is a section of Boston, and have lived in Boston most of my life. I've lived in the West Coast for a bit, but mostly in Boston. I work at the Boston Center for Independent Living, and I'm the Director of Advocacy. My disability is Spina Bifida, which is the second most common genetic disability in the United States, and one that is actually a somewhat controversial because of the political nature of being able to determine in utero whether one will have the disability, although they cannot tell at this point the severity. We had guests for dinner, and everyone went home, and everyone was fine, and my husband was fine, and I was getting sicker and sicker. My stomach was getting sicker and sicker, and there was a point at which, after hours of being sick, my husband said, "I think you better go to the hospital." And I said, "I'm not going to the hospital because they'll kill me." Because I think that even though it is necessary sometimes to have to go to the hospital, I think there's enormous fear on my part, at least, and I think other people with disabilities, not everybody, but to go to a hospital is a really dangerous environment. So after 5 or 6 hours of me being sick, he said, "You've got to go. I mean, you're really not well." And I gave in. I mean, I knew it was the right thing to do, and called an ambulance, went to the hospital, went to the emergency room, had very, very serious surgery, which they did not expect me to survive, but I did. And after, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, I was moved to a rehab. And at that point, I was out of danger. I was better medically, but I was extremely weak, both from inactivity and from all of the medication, and from being sick for so long. And so I couldn't transfer in and out of bed. And the only options were to be lifted by people from the bed to the chair and vice versa. And one day, an aide came in and said, "We have this great new piece of equipment. It's a wheelchair that has this piece that's attached to it, and the piece is placed under you when you're in bed and hooked around you, and it swivels, and then it lowers you into the chair, and then we remove that piece of it so you're not sitting on it." It's a plastic or heavy plastic material, which reminded me of a Hoyer lift, which I think it's a variation on. And I said, "Well, you know, I've never seen it here before." And they said, "Well, we just got it, and we had an hour training, and we're really excited because it's difficult for people lifting. It's difficult for us for back problems and all of that." And they said, "We won't do it, one person won't do it with you. We'll have people around just in case it doesn't work the first time." And I was, let's just say I was not at my most hostile self. I was tired, I was weak, and I thought, well, at least they won't drop me, you know, because it won't be reliant on one or two, primarily not large women for the most part. And this way it will be safer. And so they brought the piece of equipment in and they put it underneath me and they hooked it up. And they started to lift me and I said, something hurts on the back of my leg. And I have a history of pressure sores, which I think a lot of people do if they use wheelchairs. And they said, no, no, it's fine, you know, we'll check when we get you in the chair. And they got me into the chair and they took the piece out and they said, well, it looks a little red, we'll check it when you get back into bed. And had I been visiting somebody else, I think I might have said, stop, you know, examine, bring in the big guns, bring in a mirror, let me look, because I'm familiar with the configuration of my own body. But I was really not myself, even though I was better, you know. And when they got me back into bed, the material had bunched up and had ripped the whole back of my leg. And it was bleeding and it was open and it was very messy. And it was in a place where I'd had pressure sores before, which made it more potentially dangerous. And I was really upset and I said, you know, I don't want to use this anymore. And they said, well, we have to use it. And I said, I'd like to see the doctor. And a doctor came in eventually. I don't remember. My memories are a little bit foggy because I was, even though I was off medication, I was still kind of spacey. And so the doctor did come in again before they used it again. And he said, oh, it's not a big deal. We'll just bandage you and use this medication. And they just need to be more careful when they put the piece under. And I said, I would really feel more comfortable if I were lifted until I'm strong enough to transfer myself, because when I'm home, I will be transferring myself. And the doctor said, you know, don't worry, they will be much more careful in their placement. And I said, no, I'm worried. I mean, and there was this back and forth, and he was very pleasant, which is disarming, but there was still that attitude of, I know better than you do, and this is faster for us, this is easier for us, nobody's back will get hurt, and now we're watching your secondary problem, which is this wound, and we will on that. And so I had to get out of bed. I wanted to get out of bed because I wanted to get out of there. I thought that I would feel much better in every way once I was home. And so they continued to use the equipment, which they didn't rip my leg further, but the pressure and the positioning of it prevented it really from healing. And it took about 5 months for that wound to heal at home. So I just think that the whole training piece, whatever amount of training they had, was insufficient. The other thing they could have done was listen to me. I mean, if I needed to get up, I didn't have to get up in 10 seconds. So if they felt that transferring me would be cause potential injury to an individual, they could have waited a few minutes and gotten a few people to lift me, just for their own physical safety. Everyone was in potential jeopardy by using this new equipment that was not tested well. There was no real collaboration in hospitals or in rehabilitation centers in in doctors' offices, in clinics. There just isn't. I mean, there are two classes of people. There are the professionals and there are the patients. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. And in fact, I think that if you express either a strong opinion or you appear to be intelligent, I think sometimes that's used against you because it's like you're engaged in a little warfare with the medical community. I understand the need for medical expertise, but I think that there are some areas where the person with the disability needs to be consulted and trusted to have the best either solution or something that will prevent things from getting worse or some new problem arising. They do not understand that they have certain skills and those skills are to be respected, but that people with disabilities have their own skills as it comes to using, experiencing their own body, working with their own body, taking care of their own body. And if we don't work collaboratively, the healthcare will break down. If someone can give you added information that will make your job actually easier because it will prevent problems, take it. No matter how smart I am in an academic way, in an intellectual way, or how knowledgeable I am about my body, it is all irrelevant once you enter their halls. It's all their show. I don't need to put myself through it over and over and over again when it's not an emergency. Feeling heard is a really important skill, whether it's natural or training or whatever it is, or both. I think that if I were talking to people with disabilities who have to be in a hospital setting or any kind of medical setting, that they have to be kind of warriors. They have to take care of themselves and allow the medical people to assist them in it. In general, I would say you can't be afraid of retaliation. You can't be afraid of their unfriendliness or their annoyance that you're trying to tell them something that they think they already know or they think is irrelevant. You have to take some responsibility for your own self-care.
Healthcare Stories, made possible with generous support from the Manuel D. and Rhoda Mayerson Foundation. Karen Schneiderman was interviewed at the Boston Center for Independent Living, July 2011. For more information, visit the Disability Rights, Education, and Defense Fund website, dredf.org/healthcare-stories. This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 3.0 Unported license.